why don't you introduce yourself, Eric, and kind of what you do, and we'll kind of start from there.
Hi, my name is Eric Dandurand. I'm a glassblower in Harmony, California.
Yeah. And what got you started doing glass blowing?
I've always been interested in art, or always have been, I guess, my whole life. And so I had a t-shirt business in college, and I was studying art. I got an art degree.
Oh, nice.
And I had an idea for some sculptures I wanted to do, and just thought glass would be the best medium, and tried it out, and just kind of fell in love with it. Got hooked.
So where did you start with that? What school did you go to?
I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I went to UNLV.
Oh, okay.
And so I got a degree that was geared for teaching, mainly like a third history and 2/3 studio. I was trying all kinds of different studio things, and so one of my areas of study is I got a minor in Spanish, and when doing that, I went over to the Basque Country of Spain.
Oh, nice.
It was fantastic there. So the school I went to was very international, and we had, I don't know, probably 125 Swedish students as well, and I have a Swedish background.
Yeah.
So I made friends with some Swedes, and went up visiting there, and landed an apprenticeship in Sweden at a glassblowing studio.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was really neat.
How is the language barrier going into that?
Well, the Swedes and Scandinavian in general speak English very well, and like just almost anyone you run into will speak English.
Speak English.
And so I speak Spanish all right, so
right.
So that was fine for Spain, but just went back and forth between the two countries like for a period of 4 years. Worked in Spain for like 4 summers, and then back. Didn't successfully find one in Sweden at the beginning, but kept going back there and found an apprenticeship, and then just stayed up there, for a long time to do that, in like working in the glass shop, then going down to Spain in the summer, working at a English language camp, then going back to Sweden.
Oh, you're kind of jumping back and forth.
Yeah. Those are my 2 spots.
How popular is it over there, and how is it different than here? Is it pretty big over there, or is it like kind of like a lost trade kind of?
Well, I'd say that's where the tradition stems from,
right.
from Europe. If
Yeah.
Over there, like the Italians are big. They're probably known as the I guess largest history of glassblowing. But then there's the Czechs have a huge history as well, and then the Swedes quite a big history as well. Costa Boda Orrefors is the famous glass studio in Sweden, and they mainly do crystal, but they have a whole zone called the Glassriket that has like the Glass Kingdom that has expanded off of that studio in that area.
Oh,
so
really?
there's a whole area in southern Sweden that is known for glass blowing. I didn't blow glass there. I blew glass up in Stockholm, but all the people I learned with and worked with had gone to Costa Boda Orrefors. That's kind of, you can opt to do that as a national school system.
Oh, that's really cool.
So they had been through that. And
so did you just kind of fall into that, or you wanted to do that? Like you were like trying to decide what you wanted to do, and you just kind of like, how did that come about as far as like getting hooked up in Sweden?
Well, I was up there visiting friends, and I had a lot of friends from the school in Spain, so I just kind of naturally flowed together. I had been telling people, before I went to Spain, that I wanted to do glassblowing when I was in Spain. So I just kind of, people were like, what do you want to do with your life? When I was 23 and,
right. You don't know.
I was like, I want to blow glass. And people always thought like, well, that's so weird. And then, the Swedes are like, we know we have a lot of glassblowing in Sweden. And
you're like, well, this is like,
I hadn't even heard about Seattle or Chihuly really.
Right.
So I, just kind of fell into it. And they have a very big tradition of glassblowing there.
That's really cool.
Learned quite a bit.
So do they have it kind of everywhere as far as like their art or in their architecture or any of the art? Is it just art, or is it like structurally as well, or anything like that?
I'd say it's mainly functional objects. Yeah.
Okay.
In the Sweden, the kind of the area where I learned, some of the artists I worked with were doing sculpture pieces, but they were, we mainly would make functional glassblowing pieces, hand blown pieces.
Hand blown pieces. Yeah. So like what kind of like things were those?
I worked with Ebbe von Wachtenfeld and Klaus Uvestein. They were the two main artists at the glass studio I worked with. And Ebbe would make, all kinds of just like platters and cups. And she would make vases with like 3-dimensional flowers on the outside. I think that was probably one of her best, or sellers, or kind of strong for her. And so that was, a combination of functional meets sculpture. Klaus Uvestein was much more into the sculpture side, I would say, and he'd do all kinds of nautilus shapes, like a Viking horn kind of things.
Oh wow!
And so that was really neat working with him. But there were like maybe 4 other blowers there as well, and they almost all did just functional kind of wear. And that's really who I would, one day a week they would let the studio, Ebbe and Klaus were the main artists there, and they hired the other people. And so part of their payment, and mine as well, was one day a week we got to use the studio for ourselves.
Oh, to make whatever you want?
Yeah, to make whatever you want.
Oh, nice.
And so that was my main payment, and then I actually started doing little. I started in September, and by Christmas I was doing a little Christmas fair there at their in Stockholm.
Yeah. So did they use kind of different techniques, both of them, because what they're making, like different things, right? So like you said one lady is like making like mostly functional stuff, and another guy is making more like sculpture. Are there different techniques involved in both?
Yeah, very much so. I guess glass, the best way to describe it is it will move where you want it to go based on getting the temperature right.
Yeah.
And whether you are getting the temperature right and pushing it or blowing it or pulling it, that's the main ways we move it.
Right.
So, there's just very techniques of like heating it and cooling it in certain spots. Like say you're working on an eyeball, you might superheat that area and just keep working on that area, and then keep the base sculpture alive while you superheat and work on one kind of area, and then almost freeze that into shape, and try not to get the whole piece hot when you flash heat it, but then come out with enough heat so that doesn't crack, and then put concentrated heat with torches on the areas you need to work on. And so those kind of techniques.
So that's pretty complicated. Like that's a delicate dance with all the material and heat.
It is. That's probably what I've been working on lately. And, and it's the hardest stuff I've worked on, I'd say.
So let's go through kind of like just in general, kind of the process for people that don't know out there that are listening. So what do you start with? Whatever you're making, and then kind of take me through the process of making a piece. Okay,
so I guess for glass blowing, we start with molten glass. I have a furnace, and temperature is probably 2100 degrees Fahrenheit. I will take if I'm going to blow, I'll take a hollow metal pipe, stainless steel pipe, and dip it in there. You have to preheat the ends to make the glass stick to it. And
the pole, you're saying?
Yeah, okay. Yes. And so I have a furnace where I have my molten glass. I have a forge, which glassblowers call them glory holes.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So I heat all my pipes. I have a pipe warmer, and then I work out of the glory hole. So with my hot pipe, I come over and I go into the furnace. I gather up the amount of glass I need, or as much as I can if I'm going to make a large piece.
Yeah.
I then shape that into like a nice ball kind of smooth shape. If I need more glass, I'll dunk it again until I get the appropriate amount of glass. I might add color, at different stages. I have one furnace now that I just put online that I melt liquid color, but then I also pick up powders in little chunks of glass, the little chunks they call frit, and so I use all those processes at different times.
Wow, that's crazy.
Sculpture, for doing the sculpture work, it's a lot of times if it's a really big piece, it'll almost be solid, but I'll put just a little air bubble in it to help it anneal properly.
Yeah,
but sometimes if it's smaller, I'll just make completely solid sculptures too, and that just, instead of a hollow pipe, we start with a solid pipe, basically.
Solid pipe.
Yeah, or one that you can't blow through. It's sealed off. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you put your material on the end of the pipe, and then you blow yourself, right, and blow air into it.
Yes.
How much air, or like how much control do you need to have in order to like be like, have you had like occasions where you're like, I put too much air in this? Yeah,
but it's especially more your first years.
Yeah, right.
You'll have a lot more accidents or overblowed or underblew is too thick, that kind of thing.
Oh, too thick of a glass.
Yeah. So, it's just a balance of getting. It's all about getting that right heat, and you can feel it. Like,
After time, huh?
yeah, you can feel just by the way your breath goes into the massive glass.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell where you're at. You just.
It's by feel.
Yeah, it's by
All
feel.
and
A lot
experience.
of it's by feel, and I mean you're looking at it a lot too, but a lot of it's feeling and looking, and it's kind of judging.
Wow.
You get to know the weight and how it should feel when it's blown due to the amount of mass you've started with.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And then you begin to kind of work with it. And how do you add, like you were saying, color? Like how does that process work? Like adding color or anything like artistic, to like the shapes that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so some recent vases I made, I guess I start with like a clear glass molten, and then I've been melting liquid color as well.
Mm-hmm.
So basically I'm melting broken chunks of stained glass. All my glass is compatible. It's all the same, like they call it the COE, the coefficient of expansion, is what all matches. I can't just melt like a beer bottle from there and a bottle from there, and
right.
It'll crack in compatibility. They won't match. One will. Well, so when you anneal glass, you cool it slowly. If you imagine, like if this is the wall of the piece, so the center temperature is going to be different than the outside temperature,
right?
So you have to go slow enough that dissipates and they cool down evenly.
Yes.
The thicker your glass, the slower you have to go, so that heat dissipates at the correct rate.
Right.
If you go too fast, you'll have a different size glass in the center, then on the outside it'll cool, and whereas the hot one has expanded, and then it'll crack from that tension.
From the inside out.
Yeah, from the inside out in the piece. So it's like glass is really poor conductor. We use it in electricity lines and stuff. So the heat just does not flow out of it that soon. So you just gotta take it really slow and get that to a couple degrees until everything evens out. Then a couple more degrees, everything evens out.
And then you're using blow torches or something to kind of match the heat?
No, this is all once I'm done with the piece and put it in the oven.
Got it.
And so I guess I got away from myself. So if you have different types of glass, they expand and cool at different rates, and so they really will have problems and crack when the cooling down process. Yeah, because one will stay hotter longer or that sort of thing.
Yeah. Nice. So what, as far as the techniques go, in doing sculptures and blowing glass, is there something that's like really difficult that took you a long time to kind of master?
I'd say I've moved into sculpture more now, and that's definitely been more challenging for me. Like, I made some like almost life-size sea turtles recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so I make the parts individually, like the heads and the flippers and so on. And so I wanted to get into this shape, and so I started making the heads, and I made a few sea turtles, and I was realizing like, the very key important factor is the head. Yeah, right. And so I just started making heads, making lots of heads, and just getting those heads down. And it took me from before the pandemic to after the pandemic, and I had a couple injuries and things, but man, it took me like almost 3 years to put like 6 turtles together. Really? Yeah, just because it was that intricate, huh? Yeah. And then how do you like bring all those pieces together to form a full turtle? So once I get heads I like, and flippers and fins and tails and all those pieces I like, I will I'll bring them up in an oven, in a kiln, and I'll bring them up to like a temperature where it'll be, well, it's not really working temperature, but it'll hold the exact shape of the head where it won't melt it and lose any of the definition. Yeah. But it's also hot enough so that if I grab it and introduce it to the flame in the glory hole, it won't crack and explode from being too cold in the center, kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, I'll bring them up to temp, and then I'll start making the body. Blow a large bubble and flatten that, and then I'll add each individual placard on the back. All the individual little shell cutouts. Little piece of the shell. and then I each one of those is colored and made and brought over and put on and cut and shaped until I get the whole back of the turtle made.
Yeah.
And then I'll start adding, the flippers, fins,
All the individual
and all the parts.
pieces.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so that, it takes multiple forges,
Yeah.
multiple people, multiple ovens, and a lot of help. Like I'll probably, for the turtles, I think I usually have like 4 assistants.
Oh, helping you out too.
Yeah, because we'll have to, as I get it put together, I'll need somebody with a torch hitting just the tips of those flippers so they don't break. And while we're getting the head hot to put the head on, and so it becomes very risky.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you need that many people to put together a turtle. Wow, that's so crazy.
Oh.
So what do you have like on like the horizon? Are you like, I want to build something else, like an animal, or like what are you thinking?
Yeah, I've been thinking of some ideas for some more. I've done jellyfish in the past, but I have some new ideas for some new types of jellyfish
cool.
I want to do.
Yeah.
And then also I was thinking about billy goats for some reason.
Billy goats?
Yeah.
Like a head or the body or the whole?
Well, I was imagining the head being big and it coming down to little body like on a rock, the big billy goat up there. So
wow, that's cool, man.
So, but I've got to, and billy goat led me to think about like Pan, like the Green Man and stuff. So that's kind of where I'm going now.
Did you say Pan?
Yeah,
like Pan, like Pan's Labyrinth, like the.
Oh yeah, or not that one in particular, but like the Green Man, like all the Pans of the past, just the forest kind of
the forest creatures. Yeah. Oh, that'd be cool.
So with like the little horns and the beards and whatnot.
So are you like when you come up with an idea like that, are you like, hey, I kind of are you like referencing in the past like what you've done, or you're like, this is a whole new like way of working as far as like constructing something like that?
Yeah, I do. I mean both. I reference what I've done, and I just so I know what I'm capable of, what I think I can do with glass, what is possible to do with glass.
Yeah.
And I'm I feel I'm pretty confident. I've got a lot of years under my belt now of making shapes and things I want to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of that, and then also looking at what's keeping abreast of what's going on in the world,
mm-hmm.
and being like, well, that guy's doing a lot of dragons. I'm gonna do something else.
Yeah.
Or so you kind of just keeping aware and doing original, unique kind of pieces too.
Yeah. So when you're like, hey, I'm gonna do another jellyfish. I know I've done some in the past, but like, is there kind of a different approach now? You're like, oh, I think I'm gonna try this, or I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Or,
I mean, in my mind, it's gonna be more spectacular.
Yeah. Oh, of course. So you always gotta think that, right?
Yeah. So we'll see. So just some new. I'm gonna use some of the ideas I had in making jellyfish in the past, and incorporate some new ideas into that. Yeah.
So when you conceive of that, are you thinking that it's going to be something that's going to be hanged, or is it going to be something like you're going to build a stand to like and build up from that, like for the jellyfish, I guess?
These ones will be more of a smaller scale, you know, probably like a foot and like a 3D tabletop.
Oh, cool.
Thing. But I did have, I've done hanging jellyfish before, like wind chime kinds of stuff, and we've got one in our studio right now. I had a friend, and he was a guest artist, Charlie Lowry from Maui.
Okay.
And he's phenomenal sculpture. And he came in. We did it's like, I don't know, it's probably 7 foot tall jellyfish that hangs from the ceiling in our bar. Yeah. And it glows in the dark too. It's made out of UV glass, like uranium glass. So you hit it with a black light and it's like glows bright green.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah,
where did you get that? So you could just buy that glass somewhere and they make it, and you're like, oh yeah, well, we're gonna do that.
Yeah, there are glass color manufacturers, especially in like Germany. That's where a couple of the big ones are from. Mm-hmm. There's a really good manufacturer in New Zealand as well, and then there's here on North America too, color manufacturers. But most of the color I get probably from Germany. Lately, my molten color I get from an outfit that used to be based in Seattle, has now moved to Tijuana. And I get a lot of my color, molten color from there. And
but it's like somewhat easy to get still.
Yeah, you can find it in the industry if you get you just scratch around and you can find it. Yeah, you can buy glass color fairly easily.
Easily.
Yeah. There was I know the stained glass people have been having some trouble finding good stained glass lately,
Yeah.
but I think that's kind of been resolved.
Was that because of the pandemic?
Yeah, a couple big companies did go out of business.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's too bad.
And then this one I'm telling you about just got shut down in Tacoma for, I guess they just weren't handling their toxic releases
properly.
Properly. But there's a big. I heard that they were kind of being the scapegoat for that port, and they got picked on and shut down, and so I don't know.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
But then they moved to, or a different company picked up and moved to Tijuana?
They sold that company, and then they've reopened in Tijuana under a different name. Yeah.
Nice.
And they make all kinds of glass tile and stained glass, and they sell broken stained glass, which is what I melt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go over like the glass properties, I guess, and for people that don't quite know too much about glass blowing. So you use how about you explain it, like the glass that you use and the kind of the properties for heating and cooling and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so it's like a soda lime based glass. Soda, lime, and silica would be the main ingredients.
Okay.
Versus in the past, there would be more like leaded crystal, but it's dangerous to work with the leaded crystal, not healthy for you.
Yeah, right. Obviously.
But they still do make some of the leaded crystal, in the like Waterford and these places. So I guess the glass I use is formulated to have good working properties.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll have a certain amount of flux where it'll hold the heat and remember like movements you give to it.
Yeah.
There's another level that's even better. When you're melting from raw materials or batch glass,
Mm-hmm.
it'll have a really long memory, really great for doing sculptures. The glass I use is it's more for blowing, but it works. It gets the job done for sculpting too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much more economical, and it's not near as toxic to melt. It's not near as hard on my furnace. It's more economical because I don't have to melt it as high as temperatures.
Oh, okay.
So I melt like a product that's made to be melted again, but it's already been batched, made into like little ice cubes almost,
Mm-hmm.
and then sold in that form. And so I take like all these little ice cubes and I melt them in my crucible, and I can do that at like 2200 degree. Whereas if I was melting raw batch, it would be like 2400 degrees, and it would be releasing all kinds of toxic gases.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Those toxic gases would come into my studio. They would also coat the inside of my furnace and my elements. I would go through my equipment a lot faster, and it would cost a lot more to melt. I would have really, really, really nice glass to work with.
Yeah.
But I've been working with the kind of glass I use almost my whole career now. So it's kind of like with this the glass I use, maybe you spend more time heating it up and working on it.
Yeah.
Whereas with the batch glass, I would almost have to spend time cooling it down, to make it do things. So you kind of get used to working with different types of glass, and that's so I like this style of glass I use, and I make my whole studio out of that. I don't allow really other types of glass in my studio, like borosilicate glass for doing beads or lamp working, the small little things.
Yeah.
I don't allow other COEs, coefficient of expansions, ratings into my studio because I don't want those to get mixed up. So what I can do is I can do torch work. I can do slumped and fused work, which would be flat pieces of glass that have been cut and made into molds, and those have been slumped. I could take like a sculptural element I made out of the furnace and put that onto that and melt them together, and they would be compatible. So everything I do in my whole studio is always going to be compatible.
Yeah, right.
And I guess with this new furnace I put online, it's a multi-crucible furnace. I have been saving a bunch of cobalt wine bottles, and my thought to do with that is to just melt them all, and I'm going to cast those into items, but I won't be able to blow or work that glass really. But I will be able to melt it and pour it into a form, and it'll make a nice product.
Right.
But it won't it just would not be a good thing to blow. And if I tried to mix it with my base glass, chances are would break when I annealed them.
So did they tell you like, or is there an average like working time with the glass that, or you probably already know, but do they tell you like the manufacturer, like, hey, I have an X amount of, working time to?
It's not really sold like that, but if you buy like a batch, it's gonna have a lot longer working time than if you buy more of a cullet, is what they call the pre-made material.
Pre-made material.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Like, can you think of like a time that like you were working on a piece? I mean, the turtles are a pretty good example, but like, is there a time where you're making something and it just doesn't go right, and you're like, oh, I gotta pivot and maybe go this way to make it, save it?
All the time. I mean, I'd say that's what glassblowing is about. I mean, not so much like starting off with a blown form and I'm going to make that form and make that form. I can hit that form pretty much, but like with the turtle heads, I had, someone would be like, well, that one looks like a vulture. And that one looks like and, taking notes and being, okay, I gotta move the beak up here more, or do that, or do this. And so it's a trial and it's a process, of elimination and trial and error. Yeah.
So you just kind of like, but it behaves like most of the time like how you think it's going to behave, right?
Yeah, the glass. So I guess that's more me working on my sculpture skills than telling the glass what to do.
Right.
Yeah, but that is the key to working with glass is knowing how to get it the right temperature and asking it to do what you want it to do, and it will do that if you have set it up to do that. And that's the hardest thing about blowing glass. Whether you're blowing a simple Christmas ornament or making a intricate sculpture, it's all about keeping the temperatures right.
That's crazy. So what brought you to here? What brought you to because your studio is in Harmony, right?
Yes.
Okay. So for people that don't know where Harmony is, why don't we tell them where that is, and then we'll start with that. Yeah.
Okay. So Harmony, California, population 18.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was glad you mentioned that.
We say 9 people, 9 cows.
Yeah, exactly.
But I believe it's the smallest town in California. It was formerly like a dairy center during like around the turn of the century.
Yeah.
So everybody would bring their dairy there and they would process it there and then take it up to San Simeon and put it on the boats and take it up to San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
So that's the history of Harmony.
Mm-hmm.
It over the years, I guess at its peak, they had a school there and maybe 50 students and that kind of thing back around 1900. Dwindled and dwindled and dwindled and dwindled.
Yeah.
And then in the 1970s, John Schoenstein, the potter in Harmony, and he's still there today.
Oh, nice.
Started Harmony Pottery.
Mm-hmm.
And so he started the Harmony Pottery Co-op. And my understanding is there was a bunch of them who threw clay and threw pots there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, eventually it became more and more of a little artist community, which has ebbed and flowed a lot over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, there's the potter, myself, the glass studio. We have a coffee shop, and then ice cream. Ice cream is kind of seasonal. Mm-hmm. It's like all summer, and then on the weekends during the hotter months in the fall and spring. And then the winery up on the hill. And so that makes up the town of Harmony. It's like a 2-acre little commercial zone. Yeah. And then the winery up on the hill.
Right.
And then there's residents who live in the valley.
And it's south of Cambria.
That's right. It's 5 miles south of Cambria, just south of Highway 46. Where Highway 46 and Highway 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So what brought you there? Or you already knew? Maybe you knew about it. I don't know.
Well, no, I so after my stint in Spain and Sweden, I came back to the U.S. My grandpa was ill, so I was with my grandpa a bit in Las Vegas, just kind of helping him out. And I did start poking around though, and took a couple of road trips. Took one out to Flagstaff, and then one up to Canada, and came all the way down the coast. I was headed north, so I went all the way up to Canada, checked out all the Seattle scene, and down to San Francisco, there's a little bit of Bay Area scene too, and went to Harmony actually on my last day, and dropped down. I did get offered a job at a factory in San Francisco, but it would have, it wasn't the ideal situation. Let's just say that. And so I dropped down on the 46, and it was winter, so it's just beautiful green,
nice.
And just like, oh my God, this looks so beautiful. And pull into Harmony, and Carl's in there blowing glass, and there's a big poster of Jimi Hendrix on the wall, and I'm just like, I was like, yeah, this is my vibe. And he's like, yeah, we talked, and he's like, okay, yeah, go get your stuff and come on back, and I'll put you to work. And so I did. I moved here, I moved to Morro Bay, found a little place, a roommate, and just started working at Harmony. And our arrangement was I would make lamps for Carl 6 hours a day, like doing the armatures and the wiring and so on.
Yeah.
She trained me how to do that and showed me how to do it. And in exchange for that, he would let me blow glass 2 hours a day.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
So that's just how I started my business. And I would go, once I got enough, work together, he'd let me sell it out of his gallery there. He had
that's nice.
A much smaller oriented gallery. He was mainly taking orders and sending them out to galleries around the country.
Yeah.
But I started doing art festivals, and just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah. So, well, that's super cool, and like that's crazy. Like Harmony, like no one even knows where that is for the most part. I've asked, like, you know where Harmony is? No, unless you lived here, which I have. I'm from here, so it's that's so cool. So is that how most people start? Like, is there some kind of like apprenticeship? If that people want to go into glass blowing, like mainly that's kind of how you get into it.
It's usually either or.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of college programs nowadays. There really weren't so many I just didn't know about them as pre-internet.
Right.
So you can go earn up to like a PhD in glass blowing.
Really?
In glass studies. You can certainly get like a MFA, like a bachelor's degree in glass blowing, and then a master's of fine art in glass blowing. Chico here in California has a big program.
That's
I would
a good
say.
program.
Yeah. But as you dig around, you'll find a lot of programs around the country.
Yeah, Seattle. When we visit Seattle, there's a whole museum just dedicated to blown glass.
Yeah.
And it's incredible up there.
Yeah, that's some of those guys have been to my shop. Jason Christian works for Dale Chihuly. Dale Chihuly's probably the most famous glassblower in the world, but he started Pilchuck Glass School, which is up in Washington and Bellingham, and he has a place called the Boathouse where they just make pieces for his sculptors, and that's what my friend Jason does. He's like one of the main employed blowers by Dale, and they'll make, he does these phenomenal sculptures that have maybe 1,000 blown elements in them and are 50 feet tall, and
my gosh,
they're incredible.
Wow.
And so there's a big scene in Seattle. It's probably surpassed anywhere in the world, I would say now.
Why is that? I was always curious. I'm like, it's incredible, but like, why? What's the deal with Seattle other than it's a pretty artist community?
Well, I'd say it would be owed to Dale Chihuly in the 60s
because of that.
Yeah. He founded. He had a Fulbright scholarship, went to Italy, learned how to blow glass, came back, founded this school. It was just mud and tents at first, and Carl, who I learned from in Harmony, was there the second session.
No
it
way.
Ever happened. Yeah. And so that's like some of the very beginnings of the studio glass movement. It was, it happened out in Ohio and a little bit beforehand, but I'd say Dale really put steam to the movement. And he blew glass a lot at first, and then had an accident, and then slowly became a designer, but just started bringing a lot of people would come up to Washington to go to this school, and then studios just started popping up around there, and kind of like what happened in Sweden. You had the main factory, and then somebody would open a studio, and before you know it, you have a whole region of glass blowing, and that's what happened in Seattle, and it spread down to Oregon, to the Oregon coast. There's lots, and just Oregon in general, lots of glass blowing, and Seattle and Oregon, probably the greatest concentration in the United States, but there are lots of glass blowing studios around the United States. I don't know how many, but I'd say in the thousands, probably 1,000, 2,000, of small mom and pop type studios.
Right. So I did read somewhere that some universities, they'll have a dedicated, glass blower to blow beakers and scientific equipment as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, have you tried to do that at all ever?
No, I've worked with borosilicate glass, which is like the Pyrex, which is mostly what they use in scientific glass blowing.
Right.
But I'm not a scientific glass blower. No, I'd say it's almost like a different.
It's a whole
field.
different thing, huh?
Yeah, it's not a whole different thing. You can get your start there or go back and forth.
Yeah.
It's more akin to lamp working than like glass blowing. I guess than furnace glass blowing. Lamp working is a type of glass blowing, but it's mainly done with rods and tubes and torches versus like a furnace where you have molten glass gathered on the end of a pipe. Usually it'd be borosilicate Pyrex glass, but you can do it with other types of glass too. But the scientific glass is almost all Pyrex borosilicate, and they'll start with tubes, and they're much more into like very controlled tolerances for this very specific pieces of equipment they need for whatever experiments they're doing.
Right. It would have to be pretty precise, right?
So you can become a super technical, glass worker who makes scientific glass blowing, and I imagine it can be very challenging. I don't have experience really doing that though.
Gotcha. All right. So let's get into like so you do offer classes, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So and what does that entail if people are interested in getting, going, starting glass blowing and getting some experience or just learning a little bit,
So we mainly offer a lesson that's geared for tourists.
Okay.
And so you come in and I think you get like more hands-on experience from coming from a place with no experience than you would at almost any glass blowing class in the country.
Well, that's awesome.
So it's a great place to come, get your first taste of it.
Right.
We will do all the turning of the pipe, but you will do most of the blowing and the handwork.
Oh, okay.
We'll maybe do a little bit of the shaping for you with the tools, but we'll familiarize you with the different tools we use and, how the whole process works. You pick out the colors and you get to pick out the shape. We have about 6 shapes, like 3 bowl shapes and 3 vase shapes for you to choose from. And you come away with a very nice piece that you feel like you've had a big part of making. You feel like you've made it.
Yeah.
You didn't do the turning, but you did all the, you did most of the work.
Well, that's pretty cool.
And so that people love it. That's a lot of fun. People who really, really love it and who want to continue more, I'll typically start like a 10 lesson program for them where they'll sign up for 10 lessons and we'll gear those 10 lessons to get them to be able to work independently out of like be able to gather their glass themselves, be able to turn the pipe, be able to, switch axis to another pipe. And these very important steps you need to be able to blow glass, get them to the point where they can practice on their own.
Yeah.
And so teach them how to blow a cup. And so get them to the point where they can gather and make a cup completely from start to finish on their own. And then they have a personal coach the whole time they do that. All of our lessons are one-on-one. We only take one person or a couple at a time with one teacher, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so that's the same for the first lessons. But then once you get to the stage where you can work alone, then I would rent time to you for a much reduced rate where you just practice. And then you would be like, I want to learn how to make those kind of paperweights, and maybe take another lesson then from myself or some of my staff.
Right.
And then you go and you just would rent time and practice that until you figure out something else. Or nowadays there's so much stuff on, like Corning Museum of Glass is a huge resource.
Okay.
And lots of videos online and they offer lots of classes and seminars. And so you can find lots of things just online on YouTube and places like Corning on how to try different techniques, and try different things,
and then try and do it at your studio if they've gone through the proper route with you. That's awesome, man. So what kind of inspires you to make your pieces? Like, are you looking at what are you looking at? Are you looking at paintings? Are you looking at stuff online? Are you looking at other glass blowing artists, or all of the above? I mean,
all of the above, and I'd say all of the above. And once I figure out what I want to make, I will draw from all of those kind of sources, like drawings, like sketchbooks, or even making 3-dimensional, making it out of clay first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just to get a feel for like that's what that form is like or that shape is like, and then even little toys.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe I'll be like, oh, that's a neat hummingbird toy, and buy that hummingbird toy to keep that as a model,
Like a reference.
Yeah, and yeah, then there's pictures and the world in general. Yeah.
So are you doing, like, before you make a piece like that, are you, other than clay that you said, are you doing a sketch first?
Well, it depends.
Depends.
I might
Okay.
have done all of these, but yeah, it'll depend. A lot of I'd say it starts mainly with sketching though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the sketches might not be that great, but they'll key
Yeah.
me into what I know in my mind. Like, be like, oh, that's when I do that or do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So where can people kind of find your stuff? Like, if they're looking for the pieces that you sell, like if someone wants to buy something, where is your stuff displayed?
It's Harmony, California.
Oh, okay. So just there.
Yeah, that's it. I used to do tons of art festivals, and I was in I think I was in 95 galleries.
Oh, that's a
And-
lot.
Yeah, and
That's a
so I
lot.
just now I'm only in Harmony.
Nice.
And I feel very fortunate to be able to do that.
So can people come by, or what's the deal with that? Like, if you're working, what's the deal with people looking at your stuff?
Yeah, we're a big gallery and working studio.
Yeah.
We're open every day except maybe Thanksgiving closed half a day, and then Christmas Day we're closed, but otherwise we're open every day. And we're not blowing every day, but we're open every day for looking at the items, and we're blowing probably 3/4 of that time.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and so people are just welcome to come in and watch us. We don't really do demonstrations. The demonstration is just us working on whatever we're working on and
Right.
making it. But it's a popular thing. People like to come check us out. We have lots of repeat customers, a big following of people who just come whenever they're in the county. And
Yeah.
come by and see what we're doing that day, and buy gifts and that kind of thing too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because the holidays are coming up, and so people I'm sure there's probably are you doing a lot of Christmas ornaments at this time?
We do. We have tons of ornaments. It's pumpkin season too.
Yep.
Lots of pumpkins. I'm currently doing maintenance for that new furnace, and I just had my toe operated on, and
Yeah.
I'm building a new door for it, and I'm building a new hood, and just catching up on a lot of things.
Like housekeeping stuff.
Yeah, housekeeping stuff. My old furnace, I need to change elements and change crucibles, and so there's routine maintenance annually that needs to be done, and then I'm with this new furnace, I'm making some adjustments too, and but we plan to, so we'll be blowing hard though from Halloween till the end of January
For the gift season,
for foreseeable
all
future.
the holidays, coming up. So how hard is it to, especially a place like Harmony, having that furnace? Is that a big issue with the city, or is it because some places are I know with barbecue places are you can't have an open flame, you know what I mean? Is that an issue, or is it just because it's been there for so long it's nah, it's all good?
It would be there'd be county code issues to open up new places. I was grandfathered in at Harmony because it had been a glass shop for so long, so the county let me do that. I'm still required to be in compliance with all the fire codes for the county, and so I've had inspections and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And but you just have to have the right type of equipment and do it safely.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Has there been any new kind of? I mean, it's a pretty old thing to as far as the tradition and crafts of glass blowing. Has there been any new technology that kind of helps you make the stuff, or is it pretty much the same that it's been ever since the beginning?
Well, I mean, most of the glass you use in your daily life, or that is in the world, is products of all this new kind of technology, and so I'm more retro,
right?
And then the studio movement, blowing really individual pieces or sculptures, they're just not as easily replicated by. Sweden, there was a big pusher of a lot of the modernization of glass processes, whether cutting off a ball of glass into a machine that centrifugally spins it up into a bowl, or
Oh, really?
you know, there's just so much is automated now. So, I mean, there's not like a lot of new techniques for hand blown.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking.
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
But I'd say the sculpture. Charlie, I've learned a lot from working with Charles Lowry.
Mm-hmm.
He worked with Pino Signoretto, who many people consider to be the best glass sculptor ever, living or dead. He's Dale's, the little cherubs and things. Those are made by Pino for Dale Chihuly. So Pino was fantastic sculptor. Charlie went over to Italy and was there a number of years, I think almost 5 years. Has come back and is an incredible sculptor in his own right. So I've learned. Charlie's been to my shop maybe 4 or 5 times.
Oh wow!
I invite people to my studio. I have kids and I work and I can't really go to like these schools in Washington and this and that. So I just try to bring it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've had Yuri Pochnik come from Czech Republic.
Oh cool.
He's fabulous. He's one of the best glassblowers in the world too. He's been to my shop like 4 times. Charlie's been to my shop, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, just, recently again in April. And Jason Christian from Dale's, Julie's team, he's phenomenal glassworker too. He's been to my shop a number of times. So that's to say the main way I learn is
through them,
by watching, experiencing, learning techniques, not trying to copy, trying to learn and then make it my own and do things that become mine, from those techniques.
Yeah.
Same with watching videos online and that kind of thing. Grant Carmezi is a fantastic sculptor right now. I'd say probably the best in the world. Who I've like to watch his videos.
So different parts of the world, did they have a bunch? Did they have like a whole different approach, like as far as the Czech guy or the guy from Germany, or
Yeah, Czech blowing in general, they'll have different things they do differently. Like they stand up a lot when they blow, and just different things in their studio. So I've incorporated all little bits and things from little things I found from Sweden, from Washington, from Carl. Carl was very much into solo blowing, which is not common in glass blowing. So I learned a lot about blowing glass alone from Carl, and then I learned about from blowing teams with these other guys.
Yeah.
And so depending on what I'm making, and just you see little tricks here and there. Almost every time I have a guest artist, I learn at least one new little
nugget, huh?
thing. Yeah, little nugget. Or go to symposium, you learn one new little nugget. And so just build up of experience over time and trial and error.
Yeah, of course. Right.
That's the main thing. Practice.
Yeah.
Practice.
So is it something like, hey, is it an art that like if you are not doing it all the time, you kind of like if you like take like a vacation like for a couple weeks and you come back and you're like, oh, like I used to, I have to work to get back to that spot from when I left. Is it like that?
It is. It's like an instrument.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
Wow.
So you're not gonna like now. I've been blowing. Like 27. I guess I just turned 28 September 6th. 28 years now, and so I can go months now and hop back in, and it's fine. I'll blow a piece, but yeah, I'll feel. You do get rusty for sure. I'm not at my best.
Yeah.
I can do it, but then after I get into my groove and I blow again for a month, then I'm like, yeah, you're back. Yeah, you're back.
You're back. Yeah.
Very much like an instrument. You got to keep in practice.
Definitely.
And try new things.
Yeah. So what is your thoughts on like some of that stuff that's coming out on Netflix, like the Blown show, like Blown Away? Have you seen any of that?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I really enjoy watching it a lot. I wouldn't want to be on it.
No, it looks terrible.
Yeah, exactly. they asked me to interview for it, and the first 2 years, and I just not. Reality shows in general seem like very risky, depending on how they edit you and stuff, and so
definitely
not my thing. But I love watching it. I think it's fun to watch, and I've known people who have been on, I think every season. Yeah.
Right.
So it's not super small community, but it's a relatively small community.
Yeah.
In the country through the United States.
But are you learning like new things as you're watching it? You're like, oh, that's like kind of interesting how they do that, or like,
Oh, on Blown Away in particular, I'd say I've learned a couple things by watching, all those seasons.
Yeah.
I've still learned a couple of tricks here and there. I'd be like, oh, that's pretty neat.
I've been watching that. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, these people are so incredible.
So, yeah.
Like, it's insane. I'm like, how can you start from that and go all the way to make it look like that?
Yeah. They have very different levels of skill sets that come on that program.
Yeah.
But there's been some very nice work made on that program, and it's very fun to watch, very entertaining. It's been very good, I think, for glassblowing in general. Lots of customers to come in and ask about it.
Oh, really?
Since that show, and I'd say more people are signing up for lessons because of that show too.
Because of the show?
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, anything else you want to add as we kind of wrap this up? Anything that you want to plug, or anything you have coming up other than your classes and stuff like that?
Not really. Just come check us out in Harmony. It's a neat little town. And
Yeah.
We got the gallery, and you can see the glass blowing, and I'd be glad to give folks a lesson too. So.
Yeah, and if people are listening that want some gifts, you put on the tree, or little glass blown pumpkins, or even some sea turtles you got going on, just jellyfish.
We've got just about anything you can think of made out of glass, I'd say.
Can people request? Are you like, hey, do you take commissions like that as well?
I don't really.
No, okay.
I have in the past, but
Yeah.
I just kind of doing my own thing now and liking that.
Which is better.
It is.
It's totally better.
It is. Then they're not like, oh, that's not quite the blue I had in mind, or whatever.
Yeah, totally, totally. So what is your business called again, so people know, and then I'll plug it in everything in stuff that I do, but just so people know, like,
Yes. Harmony Glassworks.
Yeah.
In Harmony, California, San Luis Obispo County.
And you're Eric, and
Yep.
you're the guy there.
I'm Eric Dandurand, and yes, I'm the owner and resident glassblower. I have other glassblowers work with me as well, Nate Nix and Chuck Walters and Devin Babcock, and then we invite in lots of the guest artists from time to time, and both of my daughters are blowing glass too. They're away at school right now, but whenever they're in the county, they blow glass with me too.
So are they going through some glass blowing programs as well, or they just do it as a hobby?
They're doing it more as a hobby, but
Yeah.
they both have taken classes separately away from the studio up in the Bay Area.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, they very much like it, very much into the arts.
That's awesome. All right. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
Not really, not that I can think of.
Perfect. All right, man. Let's kill it.
Okay.